And welcome back to Face the Nation. There are 200 U.S. troops going to Israel to help coordinate the Israel-Hamas ceasefire. They've begun arriving ahead of tomorrow's expected hostage release. Our Deborah Pata reports now from East Jerusalem.
More than 400,000 Israelis crammed into Hostage Square last night.
To the hostages themselves, our brothers and sisters, you are coming home.
A hero's welcome for Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, flanked by President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
To Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
But Witkoff was never going to convince a crowd who have lived through heartbreak, despair, and rage, and accused Prime Minister Netanyahu of abandoning hostages in Gaza. Retired General Israel Ziv, who rushed to save lives during the October 7 Hamas attack, believes this deal could have been sealed over a year ago.
It's late. The costs were very high, internally and externally. I think that politically Israel lost their name in the world because we went maybe too far in Gaza. I think the attack in Doha was also, one step too much. But in the end, it brought at least the President Trump to take the right decision to stop the war.
The ceasefire is still holding. 48 hostages, living and dead, will be exchanged for 250 Palestinian prisoners serving life sentences and 1,700 detained since October 2023. The deadline is Monday. As Israeli troops withdrew to an agreed-upon line within Gaza, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians started the long walk home. Almost the entire population has been displaced.
We enjoy the moment right now, and I'm personally going home, despite the fact that it may be a pile of rubbish.
Even though home is unrecognizable for so many, Palestinians are desperate to reclaim memories of life before the war. I will just live in a tent near the rubble of my home, said Mohammed Samur, until I can find a solution. The pain of loss is everywhere. More than 67,000 people have been killed, according to Gaza's health ministry. And minds too have been shattered by this war. 14-year-old Karim was so traumatized, he couldn't remember where he once lived. Now, UNICEF says they have never known a place where every single child needs psychological support. Margaret?
Deb, that is just hard to hear. For those who are raising their hopes of what might be happening in the next 24 hours, what have you learned about how this release will happen?
Margaret, Israeli officials say they expect the 20 living hostages to all be released early tomorrow morning. They'll be driven to an Israeli military base and reunited with their families before being taken to hospital. The Red Cross will also hand over all the bodies that can be located of loved ones killed in captivity. And in exchange, Palestinian prisoners will be waiting in buses. They will only be released once the hostages have crossed over into Israel. And now this might just be the easiest part, because then talks will take place around thornier issues like Hamas disarmament and governance of a post-war Gaza. And of course, we know President Trump arrives in Israel tomorrow, where he'll be met by Prime Minister Netanyahu, and then he addresses the Knesset, Israel's parliament. Margaret?
And as you said, then the hard work begins. Deb Pata on the ground for us. Thank you. And we're joined now here in studio by Connecticut Democratic Senator Chris Murphy. Thank you for being with us.
Of course.
Just on this topic, I know you have a lot of differences with the president, but on this, is this a clear win?
Well, it's really important that we have a ceasefire. It's important that these hostages are coming home. And I congratulate the negotiators on getting this done. There's no politics about this moment, as you're going to see some very tearful reunions tomorrow, hopefully, as these hostages are released. But you watch those devastating images of what Gaza looks like today, and it's both heartbreaking and infuriating that this deal has been on the table for over a year. And it's been Benjamin Netanyahu, because of his political considerations domestically, trying to protect himself, has frustrated the ability to find peace and to get the hostages home far before today. So again, this will be a good week. But as you have reported, there are big issues to come. Israel is not fully pulling out of Gaza. There is no clear path forward on what the security and governance force is going to look like inside that country. There's certainly a risk of hostilities beginning again if we don't build on this first phase and come to some decisions about what Gaza looks like heading into next year.
And President Biden wasn't willing to put this kind of pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu. President Trump has. Your point is that's got to be sustained pressure to see this all the way through. Am I understanding you?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think the barrier here has been Netanyahu, and Netanyahu is only going to move if he thinks that his relationship with the United States is at risk. And so clearly the pressure is going to have to continue to be strong and constant.
Now, let me ask you about the other diplomacy that needs to happen just up the street, frankly. You have called on Democrats to stiffen their spines to stand up to the President of the United States. At what point, though, does this pain become too much in terms of the cost of the shutdown? And when are Democrats going to show some flexibility on this?
Well, I listened to the vice president, and he's just not living in reality. Because there's no negotiations happening right now because Republicans are boycotting those negotiations. They are boycotting negotiations to reopen the government because they are desperate to raise premiums on people in this country by 75% in order to finance their tax cut for the wealthy. Their only priority is protecting the billionaire class and the corporate class. The other reason the House of Representatives isn't in town right now trying to reopen the government, because they are about to have enough votes to pass a resolution mandating the release of the Epstein files. So J.D. Vance and Donald Trump's number one priority is protecting billionaires, protecting corporations, and raising premiums, raising healthcare costs by 75% on American citizens. So yes, I think that Democrats should say, if you want our votes for a budget, it can't be a corrupt budget. It can't be a budget that is going to devastate the lives of middle-class families in this country in order to protect and reward billionaires. That's a pretty reasonable request.
You're talking about the premiums that will increase an average of about $1,000, I believe, for those who are using some of these.
Well, that's the average, but in Connecticut, some families will see a $25,000 increase in premiums. And again, in order to afford a $270,000 tax cut for the richest families in this country. Because
also it wasn't dealt with earlier when Democrats were in leadership here. But you did hear the vice president say when it came to health care, the administration's open to a discussion. We want to lower insurance premiums. That was a quote there. Did you hear any chance at an opening?
I mean, there are no negotiations happening, in large part because the House of Representatives isn't even here. They've been on an unprecedented 5-week recess because they do not want to risk their billionaire tax cut. And they also don't want to talk about the president's lawlessness. I mean, that's the other thing that we have to talk about in this budget. If we're going to fund this administration, we need to fund an administration that is paying attention to the law. I would be a sucker, Margaret, to vote for a budget that allows the president to then go and spend money only in states that are run by Republicans and spend no money in states that are run by Democrats.
But this is just the 7-week deal that we're talking about at this point, the short-term
Correct. The long-term budget that we pass ultimately has to require that the president not engage in mass-scale corruption. But a short-term agreement, certainly is not going to fix all of the problems that exist right now in the way the president is running the country.
But you have been critical in the past of the tactic of choosing to shut down the government. You were in 2018. You were back in 2013 when it was a discussion over health care. This is what you said in 2018.
The future of the American healthcare system was a legitimate public policy issue, as is the security of our borders. But we shouldn't be having the discussion amidst a government shutdown, trying to use our nation's security and all of these federal workers and the work that they do as hostages.
Aren't you doing today exactly what you were criticizing then?
No, that was a fight over sort of the long-term structure of the American healthcare system. This is an emergency. In about a month, premiums are going to go up by 75%. And we have to make a decision whether this budget is going to allow for that to happen or to stop it. What is happening in Chicago right now is an emergency. What is happening at the FCC as they try to shut down free speech in this country is an emergency. So we have a responsibility in this upcoming budget to prevent disaster for families whose premiums are about to go up, and to address the destruction of our democracy and the rule of law that's happening all over this country. Those are urgent matters.
You do not trust that if you vote to open the government and then have a separate conversation about health care, that there will be any follow through?
Absolutely not.
Because that is what the vice president was arguing here, that it's like Democrats aren't even saying what it is they want to negotiate over.
No, you cannot trust this administration. And I think it's important to remember that we didn't have a shutdown when Joe Biden was president. And the reason is because they didn't play the kind of games that Republicans are playing. Joe Biden and Democrats, when we were in charge of the Senate, negotiated with Republicans and avoided shutdowns. This shutdown is happening because Republicans are desperate to protect their billionaire tax cut. And all we are asking, we're not asking to fix the entire American health care system. We're simply saying, don't make things worse by raising premiums by people, in some cases by $25,000 a year.
But the minority leader gave an interview to Punchbowl this week. I mean, there is just also the bare bones politics of this. And in that interview, he said, every day this goes on, every day gets better for us. The Speaker of the House said that was a callous statement. Well,
they're sort of desperately trying to spin what Democrats are saying. Listen, our priority is the American people. And yes, it is true as every day.
But you've been critical of Schumer in the past. Back in March, you were saying we got to stand up and do something. Is this about the tactic of just saying, hey, we're standing up?
No, as every day goes on, there are more Republicans that are breaking with J.D. Vance and President Trump and saying, yes, we should be willing to sit down and talk about the healthcare crisis that is about to visit this country. There are more Republicans that are breaking with the president's regime of censorship. So as every day goes on, there are more Republicans that are willing to stand up and protect the American people, to try to stop the president's destruction of democracy. And hopefully at some point there will be enough Republicans to join us and try to protect people's pocketbooks, which are about to be destroyed. Their economic livelihoods are about to be destroyed by these enormous increases in healthcare costs.
Well, but in the meantime, there's also the not getting a paycheck problem.
Where's the House of Representatives, Margaret? They're on vacation. The only way you can solve a shutdown is to have two parties that are in Washington negotiating. This is pretty simple. Republicans are boycotting negotiations. They're in the witness protection program all over the country, refusing to even show up for work. If they're serious about sitting down and reopening the government, they would be in Washington rather than spread out all over the country.
Senator Murphy, thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
We'll be right back. And we're joined now by Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes. He is the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee. Good to have you here. You are a House lawmaker in town. But I want to talk to you about your intelligence portfolio. The Financial Times is reporting right now that the United States is helping Ukraine to target Russian oil installations. In other words, hitting Russia right in that pocketbook. What can you say in regard to how the Trump administration is changing its policy? Are they truly now standing up to Vladimir Putin?
Yeah, not really, right? We've heard now for months that we're 2 weeks away. I think that's the president's terminology used several times now over many months from really cracking down on Russia. And of course, you know, there are bipartisan bills in the Congress right now which would impose very severe sanctions on the Russians that would do a lot to stop the export of their oil, which, of course, is the fuel that drives their war machine, the dollars that drive their war machine. Those have not been moved forward by the White House. So it's hard to say that President Trump is doing anything other than what he's done forever when he was president, which is trying to sort of have it both ways. Now, I will say, and I can't get into particular attacks or particular authorities that the government has, but these attacks on the refineries have had the effect of reducing Russia's ability to produce gasoline and other stuff almost by 20%. That really, really hurts the Russians. And I will tell you again, without being specific, that I wish the president would be much more aggressive with respect to turning off those taps and with respect to arming the Ukrainians. But he hasn't taken any meaningful steps back from the Biden administration. So we've at least got that.
So it's not so much that he's doing more, it's that perhaps he's freeing up more to be done by the Ukrainian military, not putting the same restrictions on them that he had been.
Well,
is that fair to say?
again, I don't want to get
Okay.
specific with respect to authorities, but his rhetoric has always been skeptical of the Ukrainians and bizarrely friendly to Vladimir Putin. I'm telling you that his actions to date have been insufficient. By the way, just as Biden's actions were insufficient, but they haven't been consistent with his very skeptical rhetoric. I haven't noticed a dramatic change, pullback, if you will, from the Biden administration with respect to our assistance to the Ukrainians.
I asked you because Zelensky and Trump spoke twice in the past 48 hours, which is notable. Venezuela, there are close to, the numbers we've seen are like 6,000 or so service people in the Southern Command region of operations. There have been 4 U.S. strikes on vessels. The U.S. says 21 people killed. You have been asking for legal justification from the administration to explain their actions, and you did it along with the head of Foreign Affairs, Armed Services, Judiciary, and Homeland Security. Can you in any way compel more information sharing so the U.S. knows what is being done?
Yeah, I mean, one
say.
of the many troubling aspects about these lethal attacks in the Caribbean against supposedly drug-dealing boats. Now, we don't know that because unlike our counterterrorism programs, the Congress is not being told who were on these boats, how they were identified, what the intelligence was. Totally different thing. Congress is being told nothing on this, and that's okay, apparently, with the Republican majorities in the House and the Senate. It's not okay with me. I'm going to leave a little bit of a crack in the door here because, again, the White House has not shared what they believe their legal justification is. They did put out a memo. I will tell you that based on what I know now and the reading of that memo, these are illegal killings. They are illegal killings because the notion that the United States, and this is what the administration says is their justification, is involved in an armed conflict with any drug dealers, Venezuelan drug dealers, is ludicrous. It wouldn't stand up in a single court of law.
They say they've designated them as terrorists.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's lots of
terrorists.
people who have been designated terrorists. That does not automatically give the authority to take lethal action. So their legal justifications are laughable. And again, unless they want to share more than what they've shared with me, these are illegal killings. And what amazes me about that is that the president, of course, thanks to this very compliant Supreme Court, has been given absolute immunity. But what about the Secretary of Defense? What about the deputy? What about everybody else in that chain of command, right on down to the guy who's pulling a trigger that results in the deaths of people without clear legal authority? What about them? Test me on this. It wouldn't surprise me if in the next couple of years there are presidential pardons offered to that entire chain of command, because it is not at all clear. Well, it is getting increasingly clear that these are illegal killings. Setting aside the law for a second here, Margaret, I don't know this because they're not telling Congress anything, but the press has all sorts of rumors that the first attack was on a boat that had turned around and was fleeing. Even if this were a legitimate military action, which it's not because the Congress hasn't approved it, firing on a fleeing enemy would be a violation of the laws of armed conflict. My Republican friends are saying, but these are terrible people doing terrible things. Okay, I don't disagree with you on that, but are we now in the business of killing people who are doing bad things without authority?
Are you saying that these were not lawful orders?
Again,
that the military was because what we constantly hear from our military leaders is, do not worry, our United States military is going to be reliant on the Constitution and only carry out lawful orders. Are you saying that these members of the military who were the trigger pullers did something else?
I am saying that to all appearances, these are illegal killings. And you can get 1,000 different lawyers of both parties on this show to tell you that at best the legal authorities are questionable. So I am fascinated by why the chain of command is so confident that the lethal activities they're taking are legal. Yeah. They don't look that way to me. And this is a big deal, right? I mean, I understand that right now we're in a very polarized environment, so it's going to be very hard for a Republican colleague of mine to make the statements that I have just made. But the worm turns, Margaret. In 1968, we convicted of murder a Lieutenant Calley, because he and his unit killed probably hundreds of people in My Lai in Vietnam, and there were prosecutions after that. So I'm a little fascinated about why that chain of command is so comfortable undertaking killings just because the Trump administration says, oh, it's okay. Not an administration that is known for their adherence to the law or to the Constitution.
Well, that is a huge topic, and I want to continue covering that with you. But I need to ask you as well about the shutdown and the cost in your home state. We saw from just USAA, which is a lender and a bank to many people who work for the federal government, they said that they've had to provide $150 million in no-interest loans to 45,000 people in just over 48 hours. That's a cash crunch for a lot of people. What's happening in Connecticut?
So, I mean, I'll tell you a Connecticut story. The day after the shutdown went into effect, I went up to see the National Guard at Windsor Locks Airport. We were deploying 500 Connecticut National Guard members to the Middle East. These were 22, 23-year-olds. None of them are wealthy. None of them are going to get paid on October 15th. And I heard the vice president on your show say that this is about the Democrats. The American people understand that the Republicans control the White House, they control the Senate, and they control the House. So when the vice president of the United States is saying this is all about Chuck Schumer, who the American people rejected in the last election, I think the American people see through that.
Well, the White House seems to be trying to take that issue off the table. The president posted on social media that they're going to repurpose funds somehow to pay the military, at least for this pay cycle. Is that sustainable? Is that legal?
Probably not. Again, we just had a little conversation about the White House's understanding of United States law, which is pretty tentative to say the best. The Speaker of the House, because I think to pay the military during a shutdown would require legislation. The Speaker of the House has taken that off the table. So, I mean, is Donald Trump going to say a bunch of stuff? Yes, he's going to say a bunch of stuff, but I don't see anything moving. The House, as Senator Murphy pointed out, the House is on vacation. So, no, I don't think that that's very likely.
Well, the Speaker says if the government wasn't shut down, the military would be getting a pay if Democrats voted for the short-term funding bill. But no one's working right now, as you just said. We'll have to continue to track this. Thank you, Congressman Himes. We'll be back in a moment. That's it for us today. Thank you all for watching. Until next week. For Face the Nation, I'm Margaret Brennan.